Microphone Masters, J-Luv here, and it is always a pleasure. One of the things I love about doing Microphone Masters is the ability to chop it up with individuals who are extremely talented, that have been in the game and have just, stories to tell and just have seen a lot of things. And so have the pleasure of having the one and only rapper Big Pooh on the show from Little Brother, man. How you doing, man?
Can't complain, man. Out here and just got finished my walk, enjoying this hot North Carolina sun.
Okay, so I'm out here in Phoenix, Arizona, so I know it's a different type of heat that goes on. So, we over here with about 115 degrees going on, so my wife makes sure I have to, if I'm going to get my run in, she says, you better get up at about 4 or 5 in the morning to get your run in, because she worries too much if I'm out there in that heat.
Oh, yeah, a good friend of mine used to live in Phoenix, and I came out there one summer, and I never experienced having to go start the car to cool it off before getting in it. Like we got to warm the car up here, on the East Coast. So definitely a different type of heat out there.
Yes, indeed, man. Yes, indeed. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this. We could spend a long time in terms of with your time in the industry, but maybe a little bit more recency that's involved. One of the things I caught when you and Fonte were on Questlove Supreme just a few weeks ago, and so covering obviously your career. One of the things that jumped out to me is that you kind of transitioned to doing some things in terms of in the management side. Is that correct?
Yeah, man, that's absolutely correct. I started helping younger artists out way before I officially started doing it, but back in 2014, 2015, I think it was, I ended up signing my first client, which is Luke, signed the Dreamville and Interscope. And, I just built me out a little roster from there, but it's just something I always had my mind on, and just wanting to help younger guys, achieve some of their goals that they wanted to achieve in this industry.
One of the things, because I rap a little bit, and I remember there were a couple of guys that I've been around and younger than me, and I remember trying to impart a little bit of wisdom or just maybe give some suggestions here and there. And does it ever get frustrating? And I'm not trying to say the advice I was trying to give this young man was going to change his world, but when you're trying to guide somebody, because you can't make them do it, you're trying to guide them and trying to give them the tools, and when they don't necessarily take the baton and run with it, can that be frustrating?
I think the frustrating part is more not having the ability to affect change like you do as the artist. So at the end of the day, I always tell them, I tell them this probably weekly, this is your career. I'm more here to as a mentor, as an advisor, and just trying to help guide you, to make sound decisions, because I can't tell you what's the best decision for you. Only you can tell yourself that. So the decisions they make don't necessarily frustrate me. I think just the frustrating part is not being the one that determines the difference in something a lot of times. Like, I can't affect the change as I would if I was the artist. And that's more my frustration than my frustration with them.
So we're here with rapper Big Pooh. You mentioned frustration. I was listening to RPM, and so there was a song. It might have been the final song on the project, where you essentially you alluded to people. The group breaks up, and I want to touch on that in a minute. The group breaks up, and people saying, "Oh, I was the biggest fan ever," and you're thinking, "Man, where was you when we really needed you?" I mean, that type of thing. Is that what goes through the mind of an artist, especially with you? You've been putting in blood, sweat, and tears. When you have some of that faux respect, or that faux "I was down from day one" type of stuff. What goes through your mind as an artist with the roller coaster that the industry is?
Speaking to that specifically, it's definitely frustrating, and it's frustrating from the standpoint of, when people you can get lost in the internet, and
right.
social media, period, when that is not, it's not necessarily the real world. It's partly a reflection of the real world, but it's not really the real world. And so, just that frustration of knowing, what our numbers were when we were together, and then just the outpouring of support is twofold. It's like, you're definitely flattered because you made an impact on people's lives with your music, with your art. But then the frustration sets in when, people clamoring, they're not willing to give anything else a fair chance that you're doing because they want that thing that they remember. And,
right.
And, what I had to realize was nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And it's not necessarily, and not saying, whether your art is good or bad, but it's not always necessarily the art that they want back. They want to feel like they felt when they first heard you. And that's the thing that they really want. It's that memory, that high that they're chasing. And it's like, people say crack is. I wouldn't know. I've never had it. But what makes crack so powerful is you're always chasing that first high. And you would never get that first high again. But you're going to chase it. And that's what nostalgia does. It has you chasing that feeling, that moment of euphoria, that time in your life where the music impacted you, at a specific time. That memory and that music will always be linked together. And so that's what they're chasing, not necessarily your art and where you are now. And it took me really stepping back and talking to a couple of my mentors to really understand, that view. And once I understood that view, I no longer got frustrated when people said it. But before them conversations, that it definitely was a frustrating thing.
We got rapper Big Pooh here on Microphone Masters. You mentioned something along those lines. Was that there was a couple of years I came across an interview, for example, with Jurassic 5, and they had mentioned that the same thing that you did. Whereas you get to a point where people, we want to do new music, but when we do shows, everybody just wants to hear what they fell in love with, and they don't want to hear anything else, and so that can become an issue of sorts. When you guys were going through it, you and Fonte, you get back on the same page, you're partners again, and which seems to be, from everything that I've heard and read, is that was the most important thing. Was that ever in the back of your mind? We're creating this new stuff. What was the expectation when you were creating May the Lord Watch?
The only expectation we had was that we just wanted to be able to put, our best foot forward and put together the best project that we could. And, we took the necessary steps to make that a reality. We wrote and recorded the whole album together. And that meant that we had to spend a lot of time around each other. It's not like when we were younger, no families. We could just, no real responsibilities other than to ourselves. So we could just spend, copious amounts of time in the studio and whatever.
It's funny. It's funny, not to interrupt you. It's funny because as you mentioned, as you get older, you got to make a concerted effort to spend that time to work on those things when you have all these other things that are going on in your life.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a sacrifice, man. Like, we both sacrifice time away from our significant others. Fonte from his kids, me more. Not that his was any less because I was at his house, but we don't live near each other. Like, I live 2.5, 3 hours away. So I would drive to his house and would spend, a week at a time at his house. And, that time I was there, that time he wasn't spending with his family because we were, in the studio working. So it was a big sacrifice, man, on both our parts. And it was an 8-month sacrifice. It wasn't just like a month, 2 months. Like, it was almost an entire year. And then when you add on the touring and the press week and all that stuff, you definitely get into that time. And that's just, you have to know that, or we understood, because we had these conversations, we understood what this was going to take. We knew kind of the time length it was going to take, and we knew the sacrifice we both was going to have to make in order to, make this the best album that we could, and I think we succeeded. It's probably my favorite Little Brother album that we've ever made.
I think it's inspirational, and I'm not saying that just because we're on the line together. Just listening to it, just the presentation of it, I think it's because you may have heard this term, adult contemporary hip hop, right? Something along those lines, where you don't have to be snapping in the club and doing all these different things in order to really touch, to have your finger on the pulse of what people are interested in. And I think that's what that project, and when I say not on the pulse, I mean, maybe my 18-year-old son likes a couple of the tracks that he's heard, but it may not necessarily be for him. It may be more for his dad than as opposed to one of my younger sons. And I think you guys did just a great job of just creating a hip-hop album, man.
Thank you, man. And most definitely, I mean, we wanted to make, like we always do, and have done, is we wanted to make an album that represented where we were in our life and in the perspective, now. I'm not 21, 24 years old. I'm not going to the club anymore. I'm not drinking, 3, 4, 5 times a week. It's a lot of things that I don't do anymore that I would have done when I was younger, and there's a lot of things that I see differently now that I've matured and gained some experience. So we just wanted to make a project that showed young guys in the game now where you can get to. You can still make a dope hip hop album, but you can mature in doing it. You don't always have to cater to kids. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of the thing we wanted, point we wanted to get across with this project.
So just a couple more questions for the one and only rapper Big Pooh. So you released many solo endeavors on your own, and with RPM being one of the most recent ones. I think that was 2018 when that was released. Are you planning on releasing more stuff on the solo tip in the near future?
I'm going through a couple ideas now. It's just my main concern.
It's the opportunity cost, right? It's opportunity cost. It's like, if I do this and I know I got to do it, right? Because it sounds like you want to, but do I really, really want to?
It's you got to prioritize. At this point. So for me, it's definitely something that's been on my mind. Something I thought about. Something I want to do, and I even talked to Fonte about him, the executive producing it for me, because out of all of the projects I've done, from Sleepers up until RPM, he's never had a hand in any of those projects.
Okay. It
was more he heard them when they were done. So with this one, I was like, if I go do something, I would love to have you, oversee it for me. But at this point, my main priority is to get my artist Luke's album finished, his debut album on Interscope Dreamville. So that's kind of what I've been putting my time into since this whole pandemic started.
Got you. So leave me with two things. One, so is there been anything you've been able to dive into, maybe a different type of hobby, maybe reading different type of books or whatever, given with this pandemic? And then the second part of it is, what's the one thing that you've never been asked in an interview that you wish somebody would ask?
Well, the first part, I don't think I've really dived into anything new. I think more than anything, this pandemic has given me time to really explore things that I like to do that I really didn't have the time or take the time to do before. So cooking, I always enjoy cooking. This has given me time to really get in the kitchen and experiment, because I haven't eaten out since the second week of March.
Right.
So there's that. Reading, I definitely picked up a few books. I always loved reading, but once again, I just stopped. I didn't, take the time or have the time. So I've, read a few books. I even, sparked the idea of through conversations of starting a podcast. I used to have a sports podcast, but I was going to come back and do a music podcast. And so, just trying to get that idea together. So, like I said, this time I hadn't really dove into anything new. I just taken the time to really work on things that I've always enjoyed doing. As far as the second part of the question, man, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, for me, I like interviews that, obviously questions are asked, but I love interviews that more flow like conversation, because I think those interviews you get so much more out of it, because one question may lead to 4 other questions, you know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily know if it's, something that people haven't asked me. I just know that, when people, when interviewers kind of stick to a super script, they kind of miss out on a lot of the joys and the gems of what an interview can be, instead of allowing it to be free-flowing and take, call audibles and go on different turns and twists and things of that nature.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time. So leave us out with this, where people can follow you on your social media, or I know that you mentioned the artist that you are managing, if you want to throw out his social media stuff as well. So the floor is yours, man.
Thank you. Y'all can check me out at Rapper Big Pooh. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. And if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you'll definitely see the artists I manage. You'll see the Little Brother pages and all the different things. You'll know exactly what's going on with me and the things that I got going on if you follow me there. Or you can just go to littlebrothernc.com, or you can go to Slum County Inc. No, not Slum County, slumcounty.com. So littlebrothernc.com and slumcounty.com, and you can catch a whole lot there as well.
That's what's up. So we're going to get into a few songs. We got to get into some Little Brother and, of course, some Rapper Big Pooh. So you are listening to Microphone Masters.